On this episode, we are joined by Kitty Chopaka, an expert on the Thai cannabis industry.
So whether you're a curious user or prospective investor, you'll learn a lot on this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 on a vacation and never looked back because, true story, Ed, as I speak this sentence, it is minus 28 degrees Celsius with a wind chill factor of minus 38 in my hometown in Canada.
I don't even know what that means. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 20 years ago, fell in love with no one actually forcing me to use Celsius. So I never left.
Well, the good thing about being that cold at nearly minus 40 is that it's also about minus 40 Fahrenheit. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. The conversion is not that hard.
Yeah.
All right. A huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about cancel culture in the West, if that's even a thing, and if there is a Thai equivalent, the significance of Chinese New Year to foreigners in Bangkok, and discussions around the big badass bird, the Garuda. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
The funny thing about the Garuda is like this was a discussion we had in the bonus show, but you know, the depiction that we're used to now is like this big muscled badass looking bird.
That's right.
But I quickly did a Google search of Garuda, and man, there's been some unflattering depictions over the centuries. There's one that looked like the nerd in my math class that used to get beat up every day wearing a hat.
Well, maybe there was a nerd Garuda. You never know.
The nerd bird. All right, well, before we jump into it quickly, I just want to do a quick shout out to two listeners. Ed, I was at an event tonight just after work. We went to a little, a glasses of wine, a little finger food, speeches,
sure,
hobnobbing around there. And two people actually recognized my voice throughout the evening.
I love it. I love the voice recognition thing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So quick shout out to Tom and Stuart. We had some fine conversations over some fine wine tonight. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's funny when you get recognized like that. But hello, gentlemen. Nice to meet you. And thanks for listening.
Very cool. Very cool. On this episode, I am lucky enough to have a chat with Chokwan Kitty Chopaka, a Ganjapreneur and founder of Elevated Estate, a company that educates and advises people on the burgeoning Thai cannabis industry. With extensive experience as an activist for cannabis legalization and also as an entrepreneur in the new economy of cannabis, and also as a consultant to cannabis startups in Thailand, Kitty is simply the person to talk to if you want to get a clear explanation of the state of the cannabis industry in Thailand. So without further ado, here is my interview with Kitty Chopaka. Okay, I'm very lucky to be here with Kitty Chokwan Chopaka. I'm just going to call her Kitty. She is, among other things, I'm sure, an expert on the cannabis industry in Thailand. So Kitty, I just wanted to welcome you to the Bangkok Podcast.
Hi, and hi all that's listening.
Kitty's name is well known in the industry as just an educator, a consultant, and just a general expert. And for those of you who've been following the podcast, you know that Greg and I have been kind of floundering around trying to keep track of the cannabis situation. But as Kitty will tell us, the Thai government's PR machinery is not really that great. Would you agree, Kitty? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to make you laugh outright.
I absolutely agree with that. But then again, like what's really that great that came out of them here right now? So let's not go into politics.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this. One of the things that we have mentioned on the podcast is, we are limited in how much we can criticize the government. Of course, everyone in Thailand is, but we still do state our opinions. But it is kind of surprising that sometimes you get a government that's basically a military government that you would associate with kind of conservative values, but then occasionally they do move in a progressive direction. Maybe not as fast as we'd like, but I've been here 20 years, so if you would have told me 10 years ago that we would have CBD and medical marijuana within 10 years, I would have said no way.
I wouldn't believe it myself 5 years ago.
5 years, right? So. That's the weird thing about, I've got a million criticisms of the Thai government, but whatever, at least we're moving in this direction, which I think is a good direction on this issue.
But overall, it's actually something that has been moving quietly, like in the undercurrents for a while now. Before 2 years ago was when medical cannabis has become legalized. But I would say that it was about 4 to 6 years in the making by various advocacy group all the way through to various doctors and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So it's not really that much of a surprise, but it was a surprise to see how quickly it actually moved, even though it's kind of like 2 steps forwards and 5 steps back.
Right. So wait, before we get into the details, I was wondering, can you just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, like your background and how you ended up doing this kind of work? And
that's actually a very common questions I get. So the answer that I give is my mother is the one who actually kicked me into this actual industry.
Interesting.
We're very liberal in terms of my mom's side and like my stepdad's side. But my dad is still very conservative. It took him a while to actually do some convincing, but like it actually mattered.
Right. So you are Thai, obviously. So did you grow up in Thailand? Did you go to school overseas? Or?
I grew up in Australia.
Oh, okay.
So I was born here. I spent 10 years in Thailand, and then I went to Australia. I was in Darwin.
Oh, okay.
I was in Port Macquarie, and finally I was doing my high school in the Gold Coast.
Oh, okay.
And then I moved back to do my university here.
Oh, gotcha. Understood. Now, and so what was your entry into kind of doing professional work on the cannabis industry? So how did it get started?
Well, my actual background was actually in law.
Okay.
I always tell all my clients was I'm not a lawyer and I don't actually really want to be associated with them. But I deal mainly with actually absolutely every realm of the law, but I manage the actual law firm. So everything to make sure that it keeps running, like 30 plus lawyers at one time. But that makes you burn out very, very quickly. I was in there for about 10 years and then it's like, nah, this ain't me.
Okay.
And while I was kind of searching for myself, I would call, like jumping from different various industry.
Sure.
My mother goes, Ganjapreneur, that's where you need to be. You're an entrepreneur. You can do this. And this is where you have, where you have to go. It took her about 3 years convincing me.
Wow.
By like sending me all those like news of like the US, which state has legalized, what's their rules, who's went into NASDAQ, how Canada worked.
Interesting. Fascinating.
So,
I like that term, Ganjapreneur. Now, it's interesting that it is true that things sometimes seem to happen in the States first and then Thailand follows. But like you said, I would never expected it to happen so fast. So it was pretty... It was pretty clever of your mom to think that it would be something worth doing here.
Yeah, like I didn't think she actually cared whether it was here or not. Like we travel, so like it doesn't mean that I have to live or stay in Thailand. And Thailand was actually on the last, it wasn't even on my mind
Oh,
of doing business here. So
okay.
like my first entry to it was trying to figure it out of how to do it in the States. In the States, that was the easiest to entry.
Okay.
It worked out to be Oregon. Colorado's was still having like some major issue.
Right.
So like I had to like learn about all of the different states' law and trying to figure out what's the best.
Right.
And then like that didn't work out because Oregon eventually went recreational and the price plummets.
Oh, I see.
So thank God that didn't work out. But then after a while, I managed to got involved with the advocacy group Highlands here.
Okay.
And like helped them out for about 3-4 years, organizing the 420 and got into like the bit more on the humanitarian side while still having my day job. And it just kind of evolved eventually into the point where this is where we're stuck. In terms of advocating, and it is because that the business or the corporate side wouldn't get in. Like you can understand that for anything to move, you can't just have the government involved. You can't just have the public involved. The corporate side, the private sector also needs to be involved.
Interesting.
Because without them, where are you going to get your supply chain?
Right. Okay, so just to clarify, so you've got kind of your advocacy side, which is trying to change the law, pushing for decriminalization or legalization.
Yeah.
You've got like that side. But I want to talk about your company. So your company is called Elevated Estate.
Yes.
So your company does something a little bit different than that. Why don't you explain what your company does?
We play the supporting role to help build and help build this whole industry of cannabis. Like cannabis involving with it is also hemp. So same thing. It's just down to the amount of THC that's in it.
Right.
So like in Thailand, hemp is considered 1% or less THC if it's a living plant. If it's into finished goods, then it has to be 0.2% of THC or below.
Okay, so we were chatting about this a little bit before the show by message. So the way I think of this kind of messy industry is there's maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, like divisions. So to me, you have hemp, like you said, with low THC, which could still be used for consumption, like hemp seeds or something like that could still be consumed, but also a lot of other products can be made out of hemp. So you have kind of industrial hemp. Right.
Yep.
So that's one kind of box, right? Then you have CBD, which I know has different meanings, but in general, CBD is going to be low THC, but have other active things in it.
Yeah.
And you know.
So it'll be just CBD in itself, and that in itself is the active ingredient.
Okay, right, okay, and that's obviously for human consumption as a drug, essentially to treat something. So that's medical.
Yep.
Right. And then there's medical, what I would just keep it simple, I would call medical marijuana, which has high levels of THC, but is prescribed by a doctor or a clinic.
Yep.
And then the last bucket is recreational, where it would be in control of the consumer.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to break it down?
That's probably make it easy to understand.
Yeah, to simplify.
Yeah.
So let's just start with hemp then first. What's the status of hemp in Thailand? If I want to start a hemp farm, or let's say I'm a Thai person, let's keep it simple.
Yep.
Let's say I'm a Thai citizen and I'm like, I want to grow hemp. Can I do it?
You can apply for the app. You can start the application to get approval for hemp cultivation right now. As a Thai citizen.
Now, have some been approved already, or people are just still in the application stage?
On the 29th was the opening of the application, so not only a few days ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is a very new thing. Okay.
Yeah, and also the form has came out on the night of the 28th.
Oh, wow.
Thailand for you.
Oh, interesting. So I didn't realize. We're essentially on the cusp of hemp farming in Thailand right now.
Yeah, but the application process takes about 120 days plus 15 days for them to let you know whether you get it or not.
Oh, okay. So, but potentially in 6 months or so, there should be hemp cultivation in Thailand.
I would say that the earliest any products would come out that actually has hemp seeds. We're talking about hemp seeds only right now.
Okay.
would be the end of the year. If you're looking at CBD, I don't see it until like beginning of next year, like for like
as in
second quarter.
As in locally produced CBD.
What I mean is on shelf.
Ah.
Or however they are allowed the consumer to be able to.
Okay, so let me clarify something. So these hemp farms, what they produce, it could that could be used to create various hemp products, including CBD from growing hemp. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now there is already CBD available in Thailand. So where is that coming from? Typically.
Well, there's only how many hospital right now? I think there's about 5 clinics. No, how about this? There's only 4 CBD products that's available here in Thailand. One is being produced by a Paipubed hospital. One is being produced by the GPO, the Government Pharmaceutical Organization. One is being produced by Kumeung Hospital in Buriram. And I'm pretty sure there's another one, but there
are CBD clinics around.
Illegal.
So okay, so this is the one. This is what I want to ask you about. So there are CBD clinics around that are operating quite out in the open. I mean, quite out in the open. So right now that those are illegal or technically illegal.
Well, here's the thing: the only way for CBD products to be prescribed is either only at government-approved cannabis clinics, which there's actually a link where you can actually check it. Wait, I think there's a link where you can actually check it.
Are those clinics? Are those clinics?
I don't think those are the one that we're talking about.
Okay,
most of them are. It has to be usually in a government hospital.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it in itself is only approved for not Thai traditional medicine, the modern medicine that we have right now. So those are for 4 different ailments like epilepsy. I think there is cancer and like
maybe like glaucoma or something like that, right?
Pretty much. It's like it's very limited.
Okay, so at the government approved cannabis or at the government approved CBD clinics, it's still a narrow definition of
and you should be a Thai citizen as well.
So this is interesting because the other clinics that I want to mention, there are a bunch of clinics that seem to be operating. It's pretty odd that they're operating so out in the open, though. Is it? So do you think it's confusion on the part of the police? Like, do the police? I mean, it's hard for us to keep up with it. Do the police know what the law is?
Here's the thing. A lot of times, most of government workers themselves don't actually know what the law is. And because there were moments where the government were providing actual private clinics with some CBD only for a limit of time because they had an overstock.
I see.
And now it's just going to create confusion because before they were allowed to, and like I can't start naming names because when you can't actually really prove back as to like, they were allowed to only 3 months ago for only a period of 1 month, but now they are not. And it's a lot of little details.
Okay, so CBD is available legally, but if you stick to the law, it's actually still quite restricted, more or less.
Extremely.
Okay.
Like access in terms of medical cannabis is very restrictive.
Okay, let's move to medical cannabis then. So CBD has low levels of THC, but then medical cannabis has higher levels. So but there are still some clinics now where you could get medical cannabis. Is that correct?
There are a lot, but here's the thing. It's the same rules that's in place for CBD is the same rule as THC. So they don't actually view CBD or THC that differently in terms of control. So CBD is still medicine. However you're going to get it, it will still end up being medicine. You need to be prescribed by it. There's not rules for it to be put in food yet. There's not rules for it to be put in actual cosmetics yet. The only thing that we are allowing, the government is allowing right now in terms of hemp, is actually hemp seeds to be put in cosmetics and food. No, not even food then yet, because that particular rule is coming out in about 4 months' time.
I see. Okay, so let's delve into the issue of a foreigner, but who's here legally. So, both me and my co-host Greg were longtime expats. You know, the purpose of the show, the purpose of the Bangkok podcast is about life as like a legal expat, not as a tourist, not as some kind of scammer, but we're here legally paying taxes, doing everything we're supposed to do with work permits and things like that. So if I go to a government hospital and I've got something like joint pain or something that could potentially be treated with medical cannabis, do you think I could get a prescription?
If you say have epilepsy or you are in chemo,
okay.
you may get treatment for that. But it's kind of, I would say like it's actually easier if you are able to go to the modern, the applied medicine clinics rather than the Thai traditional medicine. Even though Thai traditional medicine have their own different sets of criteria,
right.
It's still in a research stage.
Have you personally known of any foreigner to get a prescription for medical cannabis
yes.
In Thailand?
Yes.
So it has happened?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're just saying
it's also like how many times you've been to that clinic, how do you know the doctors and all of that stuff. You know how Thailand is, it's always who you know.
True that. So in short, it can be done, but it's quite restricted.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Access in terms of even Thais, it's still not that readily available.
Okay, well, while we're on this topic, what's your take on since we did a story on this on the podcast, what's your take on the hospital restaurant that is already serving food with leaves in it, cannabis leaves? So how can they do that?
They can do that very easily because they actually had the whole supply chain under their license. So for a legal farm to be able to sell the leaves to someone to make it into food, you actually need to go back and change your standard of production of what you will do with the leaves. Like normally it's written in there to be burned and destroyed.
I see.
Then you have to change that into it will be sold to this particular person or this particular organization to do this.
Okay.
So they were able to do that because their license is kind of within, from end to end there.
But again, it was only because it was a hospital restaurant. So a normal restaurant now cannot buy.
It's a government
government
hospital that has their own farm. That's why.
Okay.
So
okay.
like
quite unique.
they have their own farm. They have their own extraction facilities, manufacturing facilities.
Wow. Okay.
As well as a clinic.
Okay.
So they had everything within there. So that was why it was easily for them to do it. But in terms of cannabis leaves in food, it's actually a very traditional way of how we usually consume. And it's not, it's normally from the male plant. It's not because it tastes any better than the female plant, but it's because you will need to remove the male plants from, your field if you want to have good quality cannabis flower.
So then the male leaves can then be used in food, is what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's kind of works like MSG. It gives you the umami taste.
Oh, interesting.
And it's nice in, I would say like a high fat content food. So like say put in a curry and like you will, curry, for Thailand, it's actually tom kai, which is like the chicken soup.
Okay.
Because the skin of the chicken, like the fat will come up, and then that's kind of where
it helps you
chemicals-
absorb the right.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's then get to the subject of actual recreational cannabis. So I know there's been so even recreational cannabis, to me, you could divide it up because there's a difference between allowing open buying and selling of recreational cannabis versus allowing home use or home growth.
Yeah.
It seems, or at least I read about support for this idea of home growth. Is that likely to happen? What's your take? Because I thought, 6 months ago I was reading that it was almost a sure thing that they were going to let, one plant per house or whatever it was going to be.
The 6 plant thing.
That was 6 plants, right? 6 plants. So what's the status of that?
Okay. Here, let's talk about. Let's go back and talk about how cannabis tend to get legalized all throughout the world. There's usually 5 steps. First steps is decriminalization in human use, meaning that anyone who uses it won't go to jail. They may get a fine, but generally there's no criminal record or criminal punishment for that.
Right.
So, and then the second one is research. So if you are it means that after you are able to use in human, you should do human trials. That's why research is there. And then after research, and it shows that there's medical benefits, then medical is then legalized. After medical is legalized, it goes into self-remedy, which is the ability to grow it at your own home.
Right. So you would call that self-remedy?
Yeah, it's more like they allowed and trust the population to be able to grow it at home without it going out,
Right. Now, and there's at least been discussion of that in Thailand, correct?
Let's go back to that after.
Okay.
And then the last step is legalization, which is recreational use. You are able to buy it possibly with rules set in place like alcohol or tobacco.
Right? Regulations and content notices and stuff like that.
Pretty much. So Thailand in itself, it hasn't decriminalized cannabis. You still are able to go to jail for 1 year and 20,000 baht fine for having THC in your system. Just THC in your system. You don't need to have the flower or anything on you. Just it
so
being...
it's almost like the THC in your blood. That is possession, basically.
Yeah, no, possession is another thing altogether.
Okay.
So by just having it
in your system, right?
system, and then if you actually have, say, a joint on you, that's another almost another year plus some more fines. And the amount, if it's a high amount, then they presume that you are there to distribute.
Right.
And then that's even more. So
okay, well, here's my next question then. Now, I understand that those laws are still in place. Do you get any sense that maybe they've relaxed enforcement at all? Now, I saw a police captain in the papers, saying it's still illegal, we're still enforcing it. Is that your understanding? Or I feel like what happened in the States is, as states started to legalize, other states, I think, relaxed a little bit. So, I had friends telling me, it's more or less legal here, even though it's not yet, because everyone knows it's in the pipeline. It's kind of like the cop, because cops decide what to enforce, what to prosecute. Now, you still feel in Thailand that they're still aggressively enforcing it? Is that your feeling?
There was a meme the other day, and it was a comparison of the advert for the hospital doing the cannabis leaves food and two 20-year-old something selling cannabis cookies that got arrested.
Oh, wow.
So this is Thailand. We're still very inequality is a big problem and systematic, and that's kind of deep set in our system of how Thailand is. So
okay, so podcast listeners, then if you are in Thailand, then you should not assume that it's safe to use cannabis. That is our general warning. It doesn't sound like the police have relaxed at all. So unless you're in a government clinic or a government hospital restaurant, it's probably better to be as careful as always.
Yeah. And so Thailand in itself has legalized research and medical. The other two, the self-remedy, that was, I would say the easiest way to sum that up was it was a political ploy by a political party that got 5 million seats million votes into government. And I don't think they will deliver because they don't actually have the ability to deliver. They didn't study the international law beforehand to know that it's kind of almost impossible, but the only way, the way that they can actually do it is just the simple decriminalization of cannabis would actually be more than enough what people actually want right now.
Do you think what they want? So there's obviously just money people. They're just money people who don't care about cannabis, but they want to make money. So investors. Do you think those people have the clout in Thailand to make legalization happen, even though their motive is so they can, become corporate growers and sell to the international medical marijuana market? That's their thing. I've read a lot that Thailand sees itself as a future player in the international cannabis market. Is that, or medical cannabis market? Is that accurate?
They're trying to be.
They would like to be.
Yeah, they have that vision of themselves. But overall, I find that most people that are within this industry either don't understand the industry enough, or and it's a lot more about show and tell and smoke and mirrors right now, because as soon as it becomes a trend, it becomes a thing. Someone would read up on it about 3-4 days, and then they become an expert on it.
I see. Right.
And in terms of the other problem with that is there's not that much information about medical cannabis or how the trend in the market is in Thai. So people are using like really old information. Like the prices change day to day. Like unless you are talking to who are actually traders or people that are in the industry that are doing the international sales and whatnot, it's actually not that feasible unless you are smart in it. So one thing about recreational cannabis, whether it can be done or not, it's got nothing to do with, I would say it's got nothing to do with the government itself or anyone who's corrupt or who's in there trying to push for it so that they can make money. It's more to do with how the world will see cannabis. And that's really goes back to the UN, the UNODC, goes back to the WHO and the Single Convention, which is a very ridiculous sets of paper that was in place like 60 plus years ago, having the same, the stigma of 60 years ago about all drugs. So,
but it is changing now with countries like the U.S. legalizing in many states.
The U.S. themselves actually voted to not remove cannabis off the list because
on the federal level, right? On the federal level,
because they feel that they don't have the manpower and the capital to be able to teach people and educate them, as well as to enforce rules and or even come up with regulation. So it's just down to because we can't afford it and we don't have the time to do it. Oops. So let's just push that back. So cannabis has always been like in the backseat of all regulations or lawmakers or politicians. It's only will be used when there's like when you're about to go in and it's almost election time. I need to find something that will get a buzz.
Right. To get young people to vote. Right?
Oh yeah. So like it's a very cannabis, hemp, all of this stuff is a very complex situation where you can't take 3 days to learn about this. You need to be in the midst of it to actually know what's going on. But then at the same time, with it all, it's not like it's not profitable. Like it's still very profitable if you know exactly where you are and where you need to be and you have that knowledge. I feel that the decision makers who are in play within the industry right now don't have that knowledge. So that is kind of probably where my advantage is within this.
Right. That brings us full circle to your company. So your company, Elevated Estate. So essentially you provide education / consulting for the entire industry. Is that correct? And you organize your own expo?
Yep. That's normally in around the end of the year. This year we're looking at November, but last year we had like a tiny little one because of COVID, and COVID happened. That many policies has been pushed straight
back and suspended. Sure.
Oh hell yeah! But thank goodness that by the end of the year things already started moving again. So we will actually be doing a monthly workshop, and it will be in relation to like what regulation will be out, what type of things that you should be looking at. Like next month, we're looking at doing a workshop that is by women for women, and we're talking about product development within the hemp realm. And you can understand that like a lot of times with cannabis and hemp, it's a very men industry.
I see. Okay.
Like
that's another
very
issue. Sure.
heavy.
Sure.
And because of that, I feel that there's a lot of overlooked products. And because women as a consumer tend to have more specialized and specialty products that cannabis and hemp and whatnot can, be put into. And like,
it's certainly popular in the vegetarian vegan community. Hemp seeds, like chia seeds, like people take them for there's hemp protein powders.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing as well.
We also have the IP for making hemp chicken. So that would be like a plant-based meat.
Oh, that's
chicken. Great. We're looking at trying to get that out to market sometime by the end of the year as well.
Cool. Again, to clarify, so you do this education thing, which is kind of just very broad, but then again, you also provide advice and consulting for anyone who wants to start a cannabis-related business. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, podcast listeners, if you have any cannabis-related business ideas, Kitty would be the person to contact. So we will have links below to her website, but she's very friendly, very easy to contact. And I think you put it well when you said you can't really figure this stuff out in 3 or 4 days on the internet. I mean, the bottom line is that's what Greg and I do to prepare for a podcast. So that's like every week we have to be able to talk about something, but we're like internet experts, which means we're not really experts.
Well, I got a lot of things from Google. It's not like Google's not going to help you.
Oh, right. Sure.
But like it takes a little bit more to know what is real and what is not. So like it takes like, I'll probably say read 10 articles and then go like 8 is bullshit because I can't find reference to it. And you always need to go back with like everything that I do has some sort of a research paper reference, and it takes a while for you to go back to the origin.
Sure, to be evidence-based. Well, Katie, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I honestly, I hope you enjoyed it because I think I want to have you back on in the future because I feel like every few months or at least every 6 months, it could be a different world in this whole industry.
I would say like every 3 months at least, there's every
a breakthrough,
quarter.
There's like a new thing.
Yeah, because like regulation is following up. They open the big one, and then and then you go into like the whole rules of it, and you go, oh wait, there needs to be some minor ones that comes out of here. It's like yeah, we're working on it. So until it all comes out, it's still a very volatile market. Unless you know exactly what you're doing, don't get into it. I'm not cock blocking, literally. A lot of people do actually say, oh yeah, are you? It's like, no. And a lot of times people.
You're not a no person. You're just trying to be smart and realistic when someone has an idea.
Yeah. The two major advice that I normally give people is that one, you got to understand one thing, that the whole cannabis industry itself, this 100%, this one, only 35% of that industry is plant touching. So there's the other 65% that you don't actually have to touch the plants. So it means that you don't actually have to follow the regulation that is bullshit. So that's where you need to look at.
So I want to clarify that. So you mean like you're down the line of the food chain? You mean so you're dealing with some product but not the plant is what you mean?
Say the hemp chicken. I'm not the producer. I have the IP. the key word is the IP. You need to have that idea. You need to have that thing. But you don't always have to be touching the plant. Let the other players do it.
So someone else can be the provider of the raw material to you.
Yep. Like, and the price will always go down. Things that comes from an illicit market will have a peak, very short period of time, and then they will dump because everyone will get involved.
Right.
And then you are able to scoop up the losses. So it's like you need to go back and look at history, and it will just continuously repeat itself. There's like all the way through to like, you know, you can do research on it. You can be marketers on it. We definitely need like specialized online marketing for it because Google and Facebook doesn't like you.
Right, sure.
Like there's all of these specialized things that you can do that you don't even have to touch the plant, which means that you don't even have to follow those stupid rules that comes out every 2 or 6 months.
Okay. So it seems, just my take is what you're saying. It seems like the long run in Thailand probably seems bright, but the short run is still pretty murky. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting, and that it's going to probably be some slow going, and maybe I think you said 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. It's a little bit of it's kind of a mess right now.
It's a big mess.
When there's a mess, you need an expert to clarify it. So Kitty is the person to contact if you have any business ideas or any questions about this, or if you're just into advocacy and want to get involved in the movement. She'd be a great contact.
Yeah. And yeah, contact me. I'm actually pretty easygoing. But usually, please come armed with information. Because I'm extremely busy, unfortunately, running around still doing like 10 bazillion things all at once, is that like, I'm sorry if I don't get back to you, but like, please, like at least send the question. And also, I just found out that there's like a spam box in my messenger. So I apologize for that too. I just discovered that. So, but usually if it somehow get through to me, I usually answer back, and I'm kind of always up for sharing information. And there's a lot of stuff that I've already done previously in Thai and English that's out on the internet, from podcasts all the way through to reports and stuff.
Yeah, just to clarify to our Thai listeners, Kitty is Thai and she is fluent in Thai, so you can communicate with her in Thai, no problem at all.
Usually contents are on both sides, so like Thai and English.
Yeah, that's a big advantage. So anyway, thanks for coming on the podcast. I hope you will agree to come back in the future. I think that'd be great.
And until next time, thank you.
Okay.
To you too.
Bye-bye.
So Ganjapreneur, that's a new one. I never heard that before.
Yeah, but did you catch where it came from?
It's her mom, right? Her mom suggested it.
Yeah,
That's a cool mom.
Dude, that's not like cool mom. That's like the coolest. That's like the coolest mom.
Ganjapreneur.
A mom that tolerates the fact that you get high but doesn't openly admit it. That would be a pretty cool mom.
Although the danger would be, though, going to school on a career day or something. What do you want to be? My mom wants me to be a ganjapreneur, this 9-year-old girl.
Yes, okay. Yeah, well, I don't think Kitty's mom suggested she be a ganjapreneur when she was an adolescent, but I could be wrong. I have a feeling it was more like her in her 20s, something like that.
Okay.
But it's, obviously she's an expert, but I just love the fact that she has broad experience, and, so she's kind of, she's this kind of activist, but at the same time, very realistic and totally has her feet on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super interesting. Again, I've said it on the show a million times. I've never smoked marijuana. I've never tried anything like that, but it's clearly coming close to reaching a tipping point in many countries around the world, Thailand being one of them. Yeah.
And it's, there's so many, the bottom line is I think she did a great job of being clear, but the truth is that if the Thai government themselves is not clear, there's only so much that people like Kitty can do. It's like the bottom line is you can just say, well, here's what we know. The government said this on Tuesday, and now they're saying this. So
right.
But to me, she seemed to be kind of a cautious optimist. She's seemed very realistic about people who think that they're just going to be able to enter the new cannabis industry and get rich. I think like anything else, there's a lot of people with dollar signs or baht signs in their eyes.
Kind of like podcasting.
That's right. Well, I don't know. I hope that there aren't many people going to podcasting thinking that they're going to make money.
They're going to have a rude awakening. If that's the case.
That's right. But I think the bottom line is cannabis almost it is going to be a ridiculous growth industry. Like you said, I think we've passed the we're really past the tipping point. I don't think there's any going back. You know,
right.
So it's just a question of if you can get in at the right time, and so I think Kitty was very realistic about that and explaining just the complexity of trying to do business in Thailand. It's not easy.
Right. And like I said, I'm not a smoker. I don't partake, but I'm actually more interested in the fact that I see this this issue as somewhat of a litmus test of Thai culture in general and how it's modernizing and changing and liberalizing. I just think they're related.
I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, we have seen other things that we might call like progressive changes. We talked about changes in the abortion law. So I'm fascinated by the fact that ganja and cannabis have a historical part of Thai culture. So that's why I said before that this issue fascinates me, because a lot of Thai people support it, not because it represents progress, but because it represents tradition. Like
exactly.
For them, it's they're kind of re-grabbing Thai culture from the past, and so that's what I think it's a cool issue here. At least in this country, it is progressive because it's drugs, quote unquote.
That's interesting. That's like two sides of the same coin, right? Like
that's right.
It's a progressive issue, but it's also a
almost there's like a Thai traditional argument for ganja, and whatever. I'm sure even the people who are saying that are also trying to make money, but that's normal, So if you like people who are Thai traditional medicine practitioners, if they're getting into ganja because they want to make money, there's nothing wrong with that, But there's just no argument that it did play a role in Thai history. It was part of Thai traditional medicine. It was part of Thai traditional cooking.
Well, things keep going the way they are. Eventually, we're going to split off and have a sister podcast called the Bangkok Weedcast.
Maybe
Kitty can be the co-host on that one.
We shall see. Well,
many thanks to Kitty for coming on. That was really cool.
Yeah. Kitty is now the official cannabis expert of the Bangkok podcast.
Our senior weed correspondent.
That's right. That is true.
Right on.
Anyway, thanks, Kitty.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And this week, Ed, it's your turn to lob one at me.
Okay. Occasionally when I'm brainstorming for this segment, something hits me that seems so obvious and so common that I think we must have talked about it, but then I can't remember if we've talked about it or not. Okay.
Right.
So let me throw this at you. Very basic thing. I think if you spend a week in Thailand, and especially spend some time in a Thai restaurant, you will encounter this.
Right.
Okay. You sit down at a Thai street restaurant. Maybe it's a hot day. You're looking forward to a cool glass of water, and she brings the free stuff over, pours it in. You look at it, and it's a little bit brown, and maybe you take a taste of it, and you find out it's nam cha. It's like a brackish, slightly tea flavored free water.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, it's
sometimes sometimes in Bangkok they don't put clear water in your glass for free.
Hard love on that one.
Hard love. You love the slightly tea flavored water?
Yeah, it's free. It's good. I like it. I like tea.
I'm shocked.
Really?
I'm a loathe. I mean, like a hard loathe, because you can already tell from the way I introed it. I'm usually sitting there like,
what do you think about this disgusting stuff?
Right. Well, I'm just looking forward to like just clear, fresh water, and I put it to my lips, and it's got it's not strong tea. It's very weak tea. I mean, is that a correct depiction? It's like slightly brown water.
It's like making tea with a third generation tea bag that's already made 2 glasses of tea.
That's right. It's weak. It's super weak tea that is offered as allegedly the equivalent of like free water. I was thinking the only defense I could have of it is, I was thinking, well, maybe putting some tea in there, maybe that keeps the water fresher, or maybe it kills bacteria. Like I can't think of why would you mess up the taste of it, because it's typically not sweetened or anything.
It's hardly got a taste at all, but it does have like that, like you said, a slightly brackish.
That's right.
Like tea taste, but I like it.
They're ruining a perfectly good glass of clear water.
I will say I don't like it when it's room temperature or outside temperature. I like it when it's cold.
Right.
Much better. But yeah, I drink it. Suck that stuff down.
All right. Sorry, I'm a loathe.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess we just have to agree to disagree.
All right. A final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website and connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
That we do. Don't forget, you can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us on the Line app or send a voicemail, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter if you want, where I am BKK Greg, Instagram as well. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care out there. See you back here next week.
Absolutely. Boom.
My kid started saying that. He's running around the house going, boom, baby. Like that.
That's great.
He's you know what else he does? It's something that I laughed out loud when I first saw it because it's so dumb, but it's also something that I used to do in high school, my friends and I. He like takes his hands and does like, and he like chops them on either side of his junk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, and we used to do something similar in high school just to be idiots. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, that's great.
Is he as mature as I was in high school when he was 6? Or did I just have the mentality of a 6-year-old in high school?
I think that's more likely.